Welcome to our Intelligent Logistics Training Overview. The purpose of this training video is to provide a high-level overview of the Intelligent Logistics platform. We're going to be diving into one of each of the different application types to demonstrate the functionality of the software. This training demo will mimic the experience that a new customer would have in going through their initial training. So before we dive into the applications themselves, we're going to spend just a couple minutes here on the home screen going over the features. You're going to notice upon logging into the home screen that you see something somewhat similar to what I'm showing here on my screen right now. The home screen is divided into a couple different categories, and we're going to spend the majority of today's demonstration on the visibility and carrier billing sections. So let me explain some differences between these two application groups. Everything that you see under the visibility section are all applications pertaining to your tracking level data. Anytime there's a scan done on a package, that information is going to flow into Intelligent Logistics, and the data will be updated accordingly. So as you can imagine, these applications are updating frequently throughout the day, as close to live time as possible, anytime there's a status change on a package, or it changes transit statuses, etc. Scrolling down to carrier billing, these applications pertain to your invoicing and charge data. Now you're going to notice as you get into the carrier billing applications that there are some high-level tracking data available to you as well, but a good rule of thumb is that anytime you're trying to pull information on charges, invoicing, anything money related, you're going to want to make sure to go to the carrier billing section. At the top right-hand corner of the screen, there's a few features I want to point out. If you click on this headset icon here, it's going to open a dialog box that connects to our knowledge base. You can type in questions you have in terms of terminology or specific applications themselves, and you'll get a list of where your search criteria was mentioned within our knowledge base. Clicking on any of these links will give you a miniature version of that article, but you can click on this arrow at the top right-hand corner to open it up into a full screen. If you can't find the answer to your question within our knowledge base, you can click on this blue Contact Us button, fill out your information, and click Send. This will create a support ticket that will go directly to our customer success team, and utilizing this support ticket feature is really helpful in that it enables our support team to be most efficient and organized in getting back to all of our customers. Hit this button to close it out. You can also click on your user menu initials to get an idea of where you recently were in the system. So if you lose your place or you can't remember what application you were in, this recent activities button will show you that, and you can click on any of these rows to be taken directly to that application, as well as see your most frequently used. Your homepage is also customizable, so if you want to see these apps reordered in a different way, you can click to drag and move them around. You can also click Edit Homepage to remove an app from your home screen if you just simply don't want to see it anymore, and that will hide it from your homepage. Now that we've covered the high-level features of the home screen, let's dive into our first application type, and we're going to focus on a dashboard application first, so let's hop into our tracking overview. Now, upon first clicking on the app, you're going to notice there's not a whole lot going on here. We always have to remember to hit this blue Go button, which opens the floodgates and allows the data to start streaming through into the application. And in just a moment, while we wait for the tiles to load, you're going to see that a dashboard type application like the tracking overview is essentially a collection of interactive graphs and charts. Now, all these tiles can be interacted with in different ways. For example, many of them have a drop-down enabling you to change what's being shown here. For example, under carrier breakdown, right now it's defaulting to category, but maybe we want to see that by carrier service. We can click on the drop-down and the information will update. You can also click on any of these data points to see more granular detail about those particular tracking units. For example, right here under completed, we have about 63,000 in the delivered status, but we don't really know anything more about those packages. Clicking on this data point will direct us to a different application, in this case the tracking unit list, and you'll notice some filters are set here. If we hit go, it'll give us tracking level data for those packages. Now we're actually going to explore the tracking unit list application next, so that's all the time I'm going to spend on this screen. However, my point in demonstrating that is to show you that you can click on any of the data points within the tracking overview to gain more information about that data point. Now, you can think of your tracking overview application as really a sort of bird's eye view of your data, all of your KPIs, and it enables you to spot trends and just basically track outliers, but most of the time that you're in the system, you're probably going to be spending in one of the filterable list applications, which we're going to get to next. Before I move on though, I want to point out this created on filter and explain its purpose. You're going to notice as you move throughout Intelligent Logistics that you're going to see this filter pop up pretty frequently. It may not always be named created on, it might be invoice date or something of that nature, but the purpose of it is to safeguard your data. We have a lot of clients that have been on Intelligent Logistics for many years, and we're storing a lot of data in the software for them. This filter is a safeguard to ensure that users aren't running some, very massive, wide open queries, which could potentially cause some system slowness, because consider the more records the system has to look through, the longer it's going to take. So this filter just encourages you to, really chunk your data up into some, manageable groupings and ensure that you're utilizing the filters versus just running wide open queries. Now, created on means the record was created within Intelligent Logistics. That's when the data started flowing for that particular tracking unit. So in this case, the tracking overview is defaulting to show us records that were created within the last 365 days. Now we could, in theory, just delete this, especially if we were using other date filters, or we could click on this to change the date range that it's looking at. So if maybe I wanted to change this to just see an overview of packages that were created in the system last week, records that were created, I could click on that, and now you're going to see that my totals in all these charts will update to reflect that date range. So just keep an eye on this filter, and as you start to customize your reports and add different filters, just ensure that that default created on filter doesn't contradict any of the other filters that you're trying to run. So with that in mind, let's move on to our next application type. We're going to look at a filterable list, and we'll check out the tracking unit list, which is what we actually just briefly saw a moment ago when we clicked on that data point in tracking overview. This time, our default is looking at records that were created within the last 28 days. So let's hit go and see what comes up. The tracking unit list application has some really good baseline tracking data for your tracking units, including the transit status, carrier information, and other date information by default. So let's look at now how we can customize this report to fit our needs. First, we'll start with filters. If, for example, we wanted to look at packages that were delivered within a certain date range, we could click on delivery date to get that data. There's a wide range of date ranges that we can select from, specific single dates, maybe a certain date range I wanted to see. Or we can use one of these variable filters, such as last week, to look at packages delivered last week, and it will automatically know what that date range is. So now when I select that filter and I hit go, you'll notice the transit status column reflects packages that were delivered, and that delivery date falls into the range that we have used in the filter. So this is all great, but what if we want to add more filters to narrow down our data even further? Clicking on the Adapt Filters link will bring up a pop-up box of tons of alphabetized data points that we can use to narrow down our report. It's really easy to find what you're looking for within this list, and you can even use the search button to quickly find instances of what you're searching for in that list without having to scroll. This group view at the top right-hand corner is also helpful, especially for new users. If you click on it, it collapses all the data points into some more meaningful buckets that can help point you in the right direction of, where you need to look. So maybe if I want to look at packages that were delivered to a certain state, destination. If I click on that, it's going to show me all of my ship to data points. So let's select state, hit OK, and now I can see this filter is available for me to use. Clicking on the filter will bring up a window where I can then search for different locations. Anything I select will appear down here in my selected items and conditions. Now I want to point out how these columns are named. State corresponds to the abbreviated code. If I don't know the code or I'm just writing out the state, then you're going to want to do that in state description. Once you've added the locations that you want, click OK, hit go, and now our report is going to update to reflect packages that were delivered last week that were shipped to the state of California. So now that we know how to click Adapt Filters to add more filters to narrow down our report data, let's talk about how we can add data points to the output of our report. Because right now we don't see a whole lot of information, right? Clicking on the settings gear will bring up that familiar looking list of data points. And now we can scroll and add anything that we want to add to our report output. As you can see, as I select data points, I'm getting these little carrots, and this enables me to move that data point up and down and sort of position it accordingly in the list. I can also hit these two arrows, which shoots the data point up to the top, and then I can drag and drop and place it wherever I want to place it in the list. Now I've selected multiple data points, so that can be kind of arduous to do all these individually, right? So if we click this Show Selected link here, it's going to only show us data points that we've checked off. From here, I can decide, maybe I want to get rid of some stuff. May want to move some stuff around. And once I have everything positioned the way I want, I can hit OK. And the data will refresh to show me all those new data points. What's also convenient about the Tracking Unit List application is I can click on any of these rows to see more information about that tracking unit, which is great for one-off troubleshooting purposes. Scrolling down to the Events section will give me the historical list of what has happened to this package, the different transit changes and event statuses that it has gone through throughout its life cycle up until its last scan. If I'm keeping an eye on a particular tracking unit, I can click notifications to set up email notifications to alert me of when it achieves a certain status. And to get out of the screen, I can hit this X. So that's great for one-off troubleshooting. However, let's go back to focusing on pulling bulk reports. So the next thing I'm going to demonstrate is how to pull proof of delivery. There's a couple different report settings you're going to want to add before you start exporting your data. Proof of delivery status. Make sure that all of your packages have received a proof of delivery. And if you want, you can also narrow your report to only show you certain proof of delivery types. In this case, let's just see everything that is received under a POD. Let's also go ahead and add these to our report output as well. So now that we've added these filters, I can see that all of my proof of delivery statuses reflect packages that have received a POD. And then here's my proof of delivery type right down here. So if I wanted to narrow that down, I could. If you're downloading a POD for just one particular package, you can come into the tracking unit list, enter that tracking number here, hit go, and then click on the tracking number. You're going to get a pop-up window with some more information about that package. Click on this ticket icon at the bottom right-hand corner, and it will open the proof of delivery in a new window. If you want to download a bulk group of PODs, Select the packages that you want to download the PODs for. Click Proof of Delivery. It will download to a zip file, and the name of the file will correspond to that tracking number. So, it took us a couple minutes to get this report formatted the way we wanted it to, but it would be great if we didn't have to do that every single time. So next I'm going to show you how you can save your view so that you can access this report later. Top left-hand corner of the screen here, we see we're in the Tracking Unit List application. We're in the standard view, meaning everything was just the default settings. Clicking on this arrow will allow us to name our view. And then we always recommend selecting public. What that does is it saves the view and enables other people within your organization who have a login to Intelligent Logistics to be able to access this report and pull that data. It's also helpful from a troubleshooting side. If your report isn't displaying the information that you feel like it should, you want to reach out to your customer success manager, having a view saved as public enables us to be able to see that, and it just makes the troubleshooting process more efficient. So I always recommend setting it as public. Hit save when you're ready, and now you're going to see standard changed to the view that we named it as, and if we go out and go back in, there's our view, and now we just have to hit go. Now you may be thinking, wow, I'm going to be in a lot of different applications. How will I remember where all my saved views are? The next thing I'm going to demonstrate is how to save this as a tile on your home screen so that it's easy to access later. Once you've saved it as a view, go over here to the right, click on this arrow, click Save as Tile. Name it whatever you want, and then here's where you can designate where this tile lives. If I select my home, it'll be right at the top of the screen. Clicking on Tracking Unit List, I now see my tile here, and if I click on it, it will run automatically. If you want to do a one-time export of this data, you can click this button right here, and it will download to an Excel file. Which you can then distribute as needed or upload to a different program. However, if you want to receive this report at a regular cadence and you don't even want to have to log into Intelligent Logistics, you can set up a scheduled report right here. Next to that export button, there's this little arrow. Click Email List and then click Email List As, which will give you a dialog box where you can set up the recipients that you want to receive this report. So anyone within your organization who you want to get it, you can type in their email here, click enter, and you can enter up to 20 emails within this dialog box here. Click Create Schedule, name your report, whatever you want to name it, and here's where you can determine the frequency. Do I want it to start at the beginning of the month, end of the month? Maybe I want to receive this on a specific day each month, or maybe I want to get it weekly. I'm going to select hours, if that's the case. Type in 168 for 168 hours in a week. And now here's where I determine when I want this report to start. Maybe I want to get it starting next Monday at 2 p.m. In that case, just want to point out that this clock is in military time. So if I want it to be at 2 p.m., I'm going to select that 14, hit OK. And if I don't designate an end date, it will just run indefinitely. So now I've set up this report to be sent to me. We'll just pretend that's my email. I've named it, and I can confirm when it's going to first launch, so I'm going to hit save. And I'll get this prompt ensuring me that it will be sent according to schedule. Now, if you want to change the parameters of your scheduled reports or simply just delete a scheduled report, you can do that by clicking on your home screen, scrolling down to the bottom of the page, and clicking on the tile that says Manage Scheduled Exports. So now that we've explained how the filters and report output settings work, let's build upon our knowledge and move on to our next application type, which is a chart list application. The tracking summary also has one of those fun created on date filters, this time showing us records that were created within the last 168 days. And we can see here that we have a visual representation of the data in the form of a chart as well as the traditional table at the bottom. So each report that has a chart will have its own default chart that it'll initially show you, but you can change the chart type by clicking this button here. You can also change the output of the chart, and always remember that it's going to be pulling from whatever filters you have set up here. But if you want to change the output, you can click on that settings gear and choose from some different options here. Dimensions is anything that's along the x-axis of the chart. Measure is anything along the y-axis. From a visual chart standpoint, if you see series, that is what the data is being measured against. So in this case, it's showing us the volume of tracking units by delivery date, week, year for our carrier. So right now you can see over here, there's just one line because we only have UPS parcel set up. However, if we wanted to see it by carrier service, we could select that, click OK. The chart's going to refresh, and now we'll see those totals by all of our different carrier services. If we want to see this data displayed in a different way, we can use these buttons over here to do that. This second option here is the aggregate view, which collapses the data into some different high-level totals so you can see those round numbers. And this is all being pulled from that settings gear that we just saw. We can also see it in a flattened view, which looks almost kind of like a spreadsheet, giving us our totals on the right for the carrier service, and at the bottom for that delivery date week. We can also see this data in the form of a heat map. The default parameters are ship to country. However, if I want to see it by state, I can click on that filter, and now I can see where the majority of our tracking units have been going within the last 168 days. In this case, according to the legend on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see Texas and Ohio are the big ones. If I click on Ohio, for example, it does kind of what we saw in the dashboard application, where it's going to narrow down our data to only show us information for that one data point that we clicked on. In this case, all that line item data down below corresponds to those packages that were going to Ohio. These buttons here on the right control how you can see the chart. The default is chart and table. If I click on this, I'm just going to see the chart. If I click on this, I'm just going to see the table. This application also gives us the ability to pivot our data, in this case up to 3 levels, without even having to export to Excel. So you can do this directly from Intelligent Logistics. For example, maybe I want to see delivery date by carrier service, and just for fun, maybe how many of these had an exception. How about? Now, if you have a wider monitor, you might see some more buttons and options here on the right. I've got a little bit of a smaller screen, so it's collapsing some of these into these 3 dots. But if I click on this, I can see some different options. There's that familiar looking settings gear, so remember that's all dealing with the output of what I see. Maybe I want to say, maybe I don't want to see this. I just want to see volume. So I'm going to click OK. It's going to populate the information. Again, remember, according to the filters we have set. So remember, we had elected to just look at those packages shipped to Ohio. So these totals are a little smaller, going by delivery date and then carrier service. And now I can see, in this case, of these 33 deliveries, none of them had an exception. We also have the ability to show percentages, expand and collapse our columns, or open this into a full screen if we want. We can also just export this pivot table to Excel by clicking this button here. To get back to the screen we were on before, instead of pivot view, I'm going to go back to detail view. So that is the chart list application in a nutshell. Let's move on to explore one of our analytic lists. In this case, we're going to check out the scheduled delivery time period analysis. And what this is going to show us is a high-level overview of our scheduled deliveries for the next 7 days by carrier service. This helps us kind of keep an eye on things and plan accordingly. It also gives us the ability to see, of these totals here, how many of them are delayed. And I can just click a button and automatically see all that pre-formatted for me. Now the analytic list can be adapted using that Adapt Filters button. You can change different date ranges, look at it by certain build accounts or locations or what have you, but you're going to notice this list is a little less robust than what we were seeing in the filterable lists. Same thing with report output. You can change the column settings. However, because a lot of that front-end formatting work is already done for you, some of those options are a little bit more limited. However, what this application does is give you, with a click of a button, those totals, which then you can utilize those filterable lists to do some more granular investigating if that's what you need to do. You can also export this data or schedule a emailed report to you in the same way as all the others, as well as saving your views and tiles. The last application type we're going to show you is a static list. So we've spent a lot of time in tracking. Let's pop over to carrier billing and hit go. Now the static list application, this one in particular does a really great job of giving you your high-level charge information, build weights and discounts for your various carrier services in multiple different views. So the default here is week. Maybe I want to see it by month. I can just click on this and it'll automatically recalculate those totals by month. This application can be narrowed down by specific build accounts, certain invoice date ranges that you want to look at, or even locations. However, you're going to notice with this being a static list, the options are very limited. And in addition, you do not have that settings gear option. So what's being shown here in terms of the column data is fixed. You cannot add or remove any of these columns. However, you can click and drag and place them in a different order, but you cannot remove or add columns to what's being shown here. Similar to what we saw in the past applications, you can save your settings as a view, set it up as a tile, export your data, or set it up as a scheduled email. The great thing about this application is it provides that high-level total charge information in these different views with the click of a button. So we hope you found this demonstration helpful. If you have additional questions regarding intelligent logistics, be sure to hop on over to our knowledge base or reach out to your customer success manager directly. We thank you so much for your business, and I hope you have a wonderful day.